Dear students, in this series of lecture, we are going to basically focus on Indian Constitution. In this lecture, we will be dealing with meaning, framing of the Constitution and features of the Constitution. These are the three core areas on which we are going to focus in this lecture. So first of all, let's see the meaning of Constitution. Many times we hear this word Constitution, and I'm sure that all of us are having some of the other connotations of Constitution. We have been in this field since a long time, and every citizen of India should know the meaning of Constitution, and they should know that how this Constitution is made and how it is implemented in India. So first of all, when we talk about Constitution, we have to understand one thing. Constitution is nothing but set of rules. We have certain rules and regulation according to which our country is functioning. Okay, so we have taken long period of time to think, criticize, again think, again criticize. In this, we can say entire deliberation, we have taken a lot of time to make the robust constitution for India. And our Constituent Assembly successfully completed the Constitution of India long back. So about that only we are going to study in this series of lecture. See, first of all, when you talk about Constitution, we have to understand that when there is word Constitution, it simply means that all rules and regulations are written in particular book. It can be written also or it can be unwritten also. But one thing is common, that it is a law book as per which our country is functioning. In short, I can explain you in one sentence that if you want to know that how government functions, if you want to know what are the powers of president, of prime minister, what are the duties of the government, what are the rights of individual citizens, right? These all things are mentioned in the book known as Constitution. Okay, so all these rules and regulations are mentioned very elaborately so that even a layman or a common man can simply read it and understand. One has to understand that we have taken so much long period of time to make Indian Constitution. The reason is we wanted the definition which is clear in its nature. You will see many constitutions in the world wherein they are implementing the constitution, but the problem is that there are some lacunas, or we can say ambiguities are there. But Indian Constitution is more clear to understand in comparison with other constitutions. So here you don't need any expertise to understand that. Any common man can simply read it and understand. That much easy. The Constitution has been made by our Constituent Assembly. So I hope you understood the meaning. The meaning is just, it is a law book in which all rules and regulations are mentioned, and as per which the government is working, and as per which even citizens are supposed to follow the rules and regulations. Okay. So when we talk about meaning of Constitution, so first of all we have to understand the concept of Constituent Assembly. What exactly this Constituent Assembly was? Constituent Assembly was a body in which all the members were included who were assigned to prepare the new constitution for India. Okay, constituent body is nothing but Constituent Assembly, or we can say they were assigned particular task to finish the constitution in a particular period of time, and that too such constitution which will be suitable and applicable for India and Indian society. So in 1934 itself, M.N. Roy well-known, we can say, thinker, philosopher, right? He was also one of the freedom struggler, we can say. So he was the first person who put forth the idea of Constituent Assembly. He demanded that we should have independent and separate Constituent Assembly to implement Constitution of India, Constitution of India successfully in the country, because it was pretty sure that British government was about to leave India, and therefore M.N. Roy was, demanding the separate Constituent Assembly to prepare new constitution for independent India. So afterwards, what happened? That the demand was taken up by Congress party at that time officially. In 1935 itself, Congress party decided that we will push this demand to British government so that they can accept our demands and the new Constituent Assembly will be created. So the British, as it was expected, they accepted this demand in August 1940. Okay, it was known as August Offer. The offers which was offered by British government at that time was known as August Offer, and ultimately British government accepted the demand that now we can establish new Constituent Assembly to prepare the Constitution of India. So under the Cabinet Mission Plan of 1946, elections were held for the formation of the Constituent Assembly. Now it was pretty sure that we are going to establish the Constituent Assembly, but the question was, who will be there in that assembly? Who will be the members of that assembly? Okay, so for that elections were conducted, and as per that few members were elected and few were, we can say, nominated from princely states and all. We will see this. So as you can see on the screen, the members of this assembly were elected indirectly. Okay, and by the members, when we say indirectly, what does it mean? By the members of the provincial assemblies, by the method of single transferable vote of proportional representation. So in short, we can say that all those representatives were not directly elected by the people. Okay, common people did not vote in that election, therefore it is known as indirect election. And ultimately the Constituent Assembly was formed for the purpose of writing a new constitution for independent India. Initially the number of members was 389. The total number of Constituent Assembly was 389. But after partition, we all know, in 1947, Pakistan was divided from India, and after partition, some members went to Pakistan, and the number came down to 299, because initially those who were living in, we can say, western part of India and most eastern part of India, that is today's Bangladesh and Pakistan, they were part of India. But after partition, they left Constituent Assembly. They went back to their countries. So therefore, the number which was 389 came down to 229. And British provinces were also there. Means we can say British provinces and princely states, they all were there in India. Even after independence also, we might, many of you might be knowing that even after independence also, there were few princely states. We can say not few, it's more than 500 princely states were there. So in British India also, there were princely states, and from these princely states, around 70 members were nominated by these princely states. Now, what do you mean by princely states? Princely states means such areas, such zones which was controlled directly by king or queen. Okay, it was controlled by monarchs, kings at that time, whereas you can say, like neither British government nor independent Indian government was controlling them at that time. So they were completely separate, independent. So from them, around 70 members were taken, and from remaining part of India, to which we call British India or British provinces, around 229 members were taken up. Okay, so this number goes around 296, okay, or 299. Okay, and afterwards, this number goes around 229 plus 70. So Dr. Sachidanand Sinha was the first temporary chairman of the Constituent Assembly, because once we have formed the Constituent Assembly, so it was expected that the chairman is supposed to be elected, but we all know that it was, we can say, first assembly, first time meeting. So there should be someone to administer the meeting. So for that reason, Dr. Sachidanand Sinha was selected or elected for temporary period of time, and later on, Dr. Rajendra Prasad was officially elected as the president, and its vice president was Dr. Harendra Kumar Mukherjee. He became the vice president of Constituent Assembly. So you have to remember these two names. President of Constituent Assembly was Dr. Rajendra Prasad, and vice president was Harendra Kumar Mukherjee. Okay, so these are the two important names. And one more important name is B.N. Rao. He was constitutional advisor. He was the official advisor to this Constituent Assembly, who was actually assigned to give advice to this Constituent Assembly, and this assembly will decide whether to accept the advice or discuss or debate on that. Now we have to see the chairmanship of various committees, okay, which committees were established to form the constitution or for the formation of the constitution. So first of all, we can say there was a committee called as drafting committee. Okay. There was a very important committee known as drafting committee, and the chairman of drafting committee was Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, well-known constitutionalist. We all know him. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar contributed a lot to Indian Constitution. He was the chairman of drafting committee, and this drafting committee was the most important committee in Constituent Assembly. After that, one more important committee was Union Constitution Committee, right, where the you can say provisions of union governments were to be decided, and the chairman of that committee was Jawaharlal Nehru. Later he became Prime Minister of India, but initially he was chairman of Union Constitution Committee. He was chairman of Union Powers Committee also. There are a few other committees like States Committee, where again Jawaharlal Nehru was chairman of that committee. Afterwards, steering committee was there, and Dr. Rajendra Prasad was chairman of this committee. Rules of Procedure Committee was there. Again, Dr. Rajendra Prasad was chairman of this committee, and Provincial Constitution Committee, whose chairman was Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. Okay, and few other committees are there, as you can see on the screen. You can note down for your future references. Now, the most important part is features of Indian Constitution. We have to discuss this in detail. Features of Indian Constitution. We have to understand. If you understood these features, in short, we can say that you understood Constitution in much better way. Okay. So these are the, you can say, basic pillars or features of Indian Constitution on which the entire country is standing on. Okay. First of all, we have to understand that the Indian Constitution is in a written format. It's not unwritten like British Constitution. We have properly written Constitution. And secondly, it is known as one of the lengthiest constitution in the world. Lengthiest, you understand, lengthiest means biggest one wherein more articles are added. When Indian Constitution was framed, at that time, almost 395 articles were added in that. Whereas if I compare Indian Constitution with US Constitution, so they have very less articles in their Constitution. We can say less than 10 articles are there. Hardly 7-8 articles are there in the US or American Constitution. Whereas in India, we have 395 articles, which is, we can say, which makes Indian Constitution more lengthy. And what was the reason for adding so many articles in Indian Constitution? The basic reason just now I discussed, that we wanted the Constitution without any kind of confusion, without any ambiguity. Means what? Every provision is supposed to be explained clearly in detail. There should not be no scope for interpretation or misinterpretation. So our Constituent Assembly has tried their level best to clarify the Constitution without any hurdle, without any problem. So for that reason, we can say the size of Indian Constitution was increased to large extent. Okay. And that is the most important feature, we can say, in which you can say that it became the world's biggest or lengthiest constitution. One more feature you can see, single constitution for center and state. Unlike few other countries where they have separate constitution for center and separate constitution for states. Whereas in India, we have single constitution, which is applicable to central government also and state government also. Okay, so for that reason, we can say this feature also is one of the addition of Indian Constitution. Many times our Constitution is called as borrowed Constitution. Borrowed means what? Taken from someone. Okay. We can say that many times what happens, whenever you deal with something new, you have to study the past. Okay, you have to study the past so that you can make your future better. So was done by the Constituent Assembly of India. What they did, they gone through all the constitutions present and available at that time, around 1946, 7, 8. They went through all those constitutions which were available at that time. And one can simply understand that, after studying other constitutions, you can make your own constitution in more better way. Otherwise, what will happen if you don't have any idea about constitution? So there is, less possibility of framing, a better and robust constitution. Therefore, our assembly members, they went through all the constitutions, they studied each and every article of the constitutions across the world, and later on they decided to take few features from America, few from Britain, few from Canada, Germany. We have taken many provisions from these other constitutions. I can give few examples, like parliamentary system. In India, we have parliamentary system, wherein we have lower house and upper house, that is Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. This system is taken from Britain or UK, we can say, right? When it comes to fundamental rights, many fundamental rights are taken from French Constitution. Okay, they are well known for their liberty and rights, and therefore we have taken finest rights from France. We have taken the provisions of emergency, suspension of fundamental rights during emergency. Such provisions are taken from Germany. So what we have done, we have taken these all provisions from other constitution, but along with that, we have to understand one thing, that all these provisions are not implemented as it is, as they are in other countries. Of course, we have studied their constitutions, but it doesn't mean that we have taken all the provisions as it is in Indian constitution. It has not been done. We have studied their constitution, we have taken their provisions and article, but we have modified them as per the suitability of Indian constitution or Indian society. Because it is like those provisions which are there for Americans, are not supposed to be similar for Indians also. Their culture is different, our culture is different. Therefore, whenever we were taking the provisions or articles from their constitution, we ensured that it will be modified, and it will be modified in such a way that it will look suitable for Indian society. Okay, so that is the reason due to which Indian constitution is many times termed as borrowed constitution. Federalism is another feature. Federalism is a term in which, if I want to tell you in simple language, federalism is nothing but distribution of power between center and state. Okay, distribution of powers between center and state. So as you can see today, few powers are given to central government and few powers are given to state governments, and their jurisdiction is completely different. They never clash with each other majority times. Whenever we can say there is ambiguity or new provision which is coming in society, at that time there can be confusion, but those provisions which are already set in the constitution, in that there is no confusion. We have union list, state list and concurrent list, wherein when we talk about union list, so it is a list of powers which can be utilized by central government. Means only central government can take decision on those subjects, whereas we have state list in which state government takes the decision, and one we have is concurrent list, third list, that is concurrent list. Concurrent list means where center and state both can take decision, and if there is a clash between center and state, so the side of central government will be prevalent in that. Because in India we do not have pure form of federalism. What we have is we have strong center framework, wherein we have given more power to central government and less power to state government. And therefore many constitutional experts, they have termed Indian federalism as quasi federalism or half federalism. Quasi means half, because when we talk about federalism, it simply means that power should be equally divided between center and state. But in India, powers are not equally divided. More powers are given to center and less powers are given to states. Therefore, we are not pure form of federal state. We are half federal. Okay. So that is one of the important feature of Indian constitution. One more is secular state. India is termed as secular state, which means that the government of India and government of all the states, and even all, we can say, three pillars: parliament, executive and judiciary. All these three bodies treat each and every citizen equally, irrespective of their caste, gender, religion, nothing. These all things are kept aside, and each and every citizen is equal in the eyes of law, wherein each and every person can practice, profess and propagate the religion he or she wants to. So there is no barrier on religion. There is no compulsion on religion. State will give equal support to every religion. Rather, if state doesn't want, they can keep themselves refrain. They can keep themselves separate from religion. So first of all, we have to understand that equal treatment is given to all the states. And secondly, we do not have any official religion of state, or we can say in general government. India doesn't have any official religion. Okay, So that makes Indian government and Indian society more robust. In India, we have not given official status to any religion. Each and every religion is equal in the eyes of law. So that makes Indian state as secular state. We have next feature is parliamentary form of government, wherein we have Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. And the leader of Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha, or we can say with the help and support of Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, Prime Minister is selected. All members, we all know that Rajya Sabha is indirect body or representatives of the states. Therefore, their elections are conducted indirectly, whereas in Lok Sabha, elections are conducted directly, wherein after every 5 years, Indian citizens vote for their representatives, and their representatives goes to Lok Sabha. And out of these all members in Lok Sabha, all these members decide one person as Prime Minister, because the one who is going to be the leader of the house, he should gain the support of Parliament, especially Lok Sabha. Okay, he should gain the support of Lok Sabha. If majority members are supporting to that leader, it means he can now become the Prime Minister. So this system is there in India, and we have taken this system of Parliament from Britain. Next one is single citizenship. In this, we have example of USA, where they are having double citizenship. In USA, they are having double citizenship. One is their union citizenship, and second is province, means state citizenship. Whereas in India, we have single citizenship. We are first Indian and last Indian, right? At the beginning, at the end, everywhere we are having only one identity, and that is Indian. So we are citizens of India. That is called as one or single citizenship. We cannot say that I am living in Maharashtra, therefore I have Maharashtrian citizenship, or someone is living in other states. So that citizen, we can say migration doesn't matter, or that identity doesn't matter over here. We have only one citizenship, and that is Indian citizenship. That's all. So afterwards, we can say directive principles of state policy. Few directive principles are provided by the Constitution of India. Now let me clarify what do we mean by directive principles of state policy. This is such list, or we can say these are the provisions which are expected to be carried out by the government in future. It is like we want to take our society towards ideal state, right? Now implementing these all policies might not be possible, but in future we can implement those policies. So in directive principles of state policies, a kind of expectation is extended, or a kind of expectation is made from the government, that government should do these things or those things. It is a kind of expectation from the government. It is not binding. Directive principles are not binding on the government, but somewhere in the future, these all provisions are supposed to be implemented in India. Okay. And if government is not implementing those directive principles, so in this case, no one can go to judiciary or Supreme Court, because they are non-justiciable. Non-justiciable means what? You cannot challenge government in this regard in judiciary. Whenever government feels that now it is proper time to implement this particular provision, then government can take decision on that. Till that time, no one can compulsorize or force in legal way, in this way. Next one is fundamental rights and duties. Most important point of Indian Constitution. Fundamental rights are mentioned in part 3 of Indian Constitution, wherein we can say basic fundamental rights are given to each and every citizen, irrespective of their caste, religion, gender, doesn't matter. what religion you belongs to, what gender you have, which caste you belong to is neglected over here. Is we can say these all things does not matter over here. Each and every citizen is treated equally, and therefore all the fundamental rights are given to each and every citizen equally. Okay, these are the basic fundamental rights which is to be given to every citizen without any kind of discrimination. And if your fundamental right is violated, we have, we can say, option to go to judiciary, approach judiciary, and judiciary will give justice to them in this regard. Okay, because fundamental rights are justiciable. Justiciable means what? If those are not fulfilled, you can approach judiciary, and judiciary will take decision on that, and judiciary will give, we can say, justice to the people. And afterwards, we can say in that only we have one more point: duties. We have certain fundamental duties as well. Now, when we are having rights, along with that, we are supposed to have certain duties also. Otherwise, if we are talking only about rights and nobody is talking about duties, so that will not be the fair, we can say, comparison. So for that reason, we have added fundamental duties also, right? But these fundamental duties are again non-justiciable. If someone is not, we can say, following fundamental duties, so in this regard, we cannot go to judiciary because they are non-justiciable, right? Fundamental duties are, expected to be carried out by everyone. Okay, like for example, respecting national anthem. We should respect national anthem. We should respect national flag, even our national constitution, right? These all are, we can say, expectations which are, we can say, expected by the constitution, and we all are supposed to follow all those, we can say, expectations, and we are supposed to carry out all our activities in accordance with the constitution, so that we can carry out our fundamental duties. Okay. Afterwards, we have universal adult franchise. It simply means that the one who is above the age of 18 years, they can vote in the election. Okay. Whether you are men, whether you are women, doesn't matter. Universal means complete. Okay, complete voting right is given to men and women equally since independence itself. Okay, when we implemented our Indian constitution, from then onward, in the first stroke itself, we have been giving voting rights to women and men equally. There is no discrimination. It's not like men are having two votes or women is having single vote. That is not expected. Or rich people are having two votes or multiple votes. Or one can simply say that the educated people are having multiple votes and uneducated person is having less votes. That is also not here in Indian constitution. Whether you are rich, poor, educated, uneducated, male, female, which religion you belong to, doesn't matter. Every person, every citizen will get one vote in every election. That means universal adult franchise, giving voting rights without any kind of discrimination. Then strong center framework. Just now I discussed that in India we are having strong center framework, which means central government is having more power than state government, because all states, like in USA, what happened over there? First, all those states came together and then they established their union government. Okay, whereas in India we have opposite system. First, we have created union government, and afterwards we have created so many states. Okay, so therefore, in India we have given more power to central government and less power to state government, and that is the reason due to which we call India as strong center framework. One more point is there: blend of rigidity and flexibility. Now, what do you mean by rigidity and flexibility? It simply means that we can amend the Indian Constitution as per the need of time. Okay. If you want to pass any bill in the parliament, you need just simple majority. If you want to pass any ordinary bill, you need only simple majority. Whereas if you want to amend the constitution, you need special majority. Okay. Now, what do you mean by simple majority or special majority? Simple majority means you should get minimum more than 50% votes in favor of the bill. Minimum 50% means more than 50% votes you should get to pass any ordinary bill. It is called as simple majority. Whereas we have one more concept, that is special majority. Special majority means you need minimum support of 2/3 member of the parliament. Okay, you need support of minimum 2/3 members of Lok Sabha also and of Rajya Sabha also to pass any amendment bill. Okay, so therefore we can see that at one side for passing ordinary bill we need simple majority, which is very easy. Therefore we can say it is flexible. Okay, to add new article, or we can say to bring new policy in the constitution, it is flexible, you can do that. But when it comes to amendment of the constitution, you need support of minimum 2/3 members of Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. So here it is quite difficult to gain. Here it is quite difficult to gain support, and therefore it is quite rigid. It is quite, we can say, hard, right? And therefore we call that Indian Constitution is rigid also and flexible also. In this both way it goes on. And last and most important point, integrated and independent judiciary. Now, what do you mean by independent judiciary? That judiciary is there in India which will be free from political interference. Free from political interference means what? Even the judges of judiciary will not be appointed by the government. The judiciary itself appoint its own judges. They are completely independent. Now there is a possibility that, let's assume that the government is appointing the judges. So there is a possibility that government will appoint only those judges who are in favor of government. So there is a possibility of discrimination and favoritism. And that is the reason Indian judiciary is kept separate and independent, wherein no politician can interfere. And therefore we can expect free and fair justice from judiciary. So these are the, we can say, most important features of Indian Constitution. I hope this series of lecture helped you to understand what exactly do we mean by Constitution and what are the features of Indian Constitution. Thank you for patiently listening.